Okay, cool. We're recording.
All right, awesome. We are recording. Welcome, everybody. This is going to be another exciting interview series. Today we have Siddhartha Saxena, who is the co-founder and CTO of Merlin AI. Merlin is an awesome aggregator of multiple LLMs and AI tools that helps you just access whatever is the latest and greatest at your fingertips in the context that you are, with a browser extension, a mobile app, and tons of other offerings with tons of integrations, tools, image generation, summarization, and a bunch of other things. So they gained a lot of virality, and I think I don't know if I can talk about numbers in terms of users, but they have tons of users. They have upwards of 2 million users as we speak right now. We met at one of the events that we host. So if you're in the Bay Area, please stop by one of our events, which we host every Thursday. And in 2 weeks, on June 5th, we're going to be having a pretty massive event with multiple video generation startups. But yeah, Siddhartha talked a little bit about his product. And I was surprised when I looked at his website and saw massive growth and massive engagement. And it's something that I was complaining to Mark about, the fact that we don't really have a good browser extension that can jump into the context that we are in right now and help us understand what we're dealing with in the browser. Bing was supposed to be that savior, the Bing Copilot, but no one really uses Bing. And it seems analogous to how GitHub Copilot was initially launched with a lot of fanfare, but then eventually Cursor from the startup world kind of took over. And this kind of seems like a similar story where Bing was supposed to be like this savior for browsers, which would give you context and LLM intelligence within your workflow. But we've been waiting and waiting, and it hasn't really taken off. And now startups like Merlin are really helping people fill that need. So Siddhartha, actually, before we jump in, to give you a context, I'm one of your hosts, Shashank, and I have Mark with me here, joined remotely. We're both software engineers in big tech, or we used to be. I currently work at the AI Labs org at Google, building. Right now, it's public, so I can tell you it's called Stitch with Google. It's a no-code app builder, which you can check it out. It helps you build a whole website with a single prompt. And Mark is working on some cool, super stealth projects after leaving his gig at Amazon for a long time. But yeah, that is a little bit about us. Now, let's jump to Siddhartha. Again, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah.
And you are here for a short time in Silicon Valley to try to understand how you can take some of the learnings from this incredible place back to your company. And you're also going to attend some awesome conferences while you're here. But yeah, do you want to tell us a little bit about your background? You went to IIT, which is one of the best universities in India with massive, massive competition, and it attracts a lot of incredible talent. After that, you were working as an ML engineer for a little while, and then you decided to start Merlin.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about your background? What made you start this company?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. First of all, thanks Shashank and Mark for having me. It's great, like the events I think like that you have been hosting. Last event I went, like it was great turnout and like a lot of interesting talks. So I think like it definitely like a great place to be to like learn about the great like latest and greatest. So jumping about myself. As you mentioned, like I graduated from IIT Kanpur CS in 2019. It's like a lot of people like it's a very competitive exam, but I think at the end of the day what you get inside when you get in the college is like that peer group that is with you. I think like any other college, like any college, like other than the education, it is about the people who are around you. So I think like that was a great learning, and I think as like even when I'm coming here, like the alumni network of the college is like very strong. They're like some alumni were like 15 years back, and I was talking to them about my own like let's say the hostels. So I had like a hostel system where we used to stay inside the college itself, and it was the same college hostel which is right now and like then. So like this talking to these people like from like 10, 20, 30 years back as well. It's like pretty fun. So yeah, I graduated from there, and I like again during my undergrad, machine learning I think was maybe not that broad, like very mainstream. I would say AI and machine learning, or I would still say it was very popular and very big. OpenAI and all of them were like I think came out around 2017, 16, and like people were very skeptic about like AGI as a thing. I think like even like when ChatGPT came in, like 1 year down the line, people were still not comfortable with the term of talking about AGI and like whether AGI will come in. But at that time, like those things were very very far away. Like you were trying to, for example, like when I was in college, we were doing natural language processing. One of my friends was doing abstractive NLP. So this means that you take a whole like let's say newspaper article and try to summarize it. And at that time, the techniques which were good were generally like just taking the first few lines of the article. They were like the best techniques. And now, if you think about it, like you can let's just do an API call, and like even with the cheapest and the smallest model which works on your mobile phone, you can just do that. So the things have moved like at an exponential speed from like there. So yeah, I did like undergrad at IIT Kanpur, did a lot of machine learning, and initially was actually quite like interested into doing research and like PhD and masters and all of that as well. So I like did a lot of like research internships and projects as well. But I think like during one of my research projects, which was like a 6 month long thing, I just felt that it's not something for me because it's like you have to work at a single problem for a very long period of time, and the reward function that you have is very sparse. So you might like let's say work for 5 months and then you might have a paper. It might actually not work out, then you might not even have that paper. But if it works out, you can have multiple papers, but the period is very long. But what I loved about that, like, and just research in general, is very high ownership. That you have like complete ownership what we are doing, what you're building, and what you're working on, and which is analogous to like how things are in a startup as well. So like might come back to it later, but that was also like how like I've always wanted to do a startup or something, like just build something of my own, because I enjoy that ownership that you get. Like just you are not doing it for anyone else, you're just doing it for yourself because you want to build something big. So like there was a graph in our college which used to say that like let's say if this is a circle of the universe and your PhD thesis has a very small dent on the whole world. So I think like startups to an extent are like that, but maybe like a bigger version of it. And like what you want is that over time, like it's like not a very tiny speck on mankind in like the whole thing, and like as big of a thing it can be. So yeah, after that I like went to Canada for a couple of years, worked there as an ML engineer as well. So we were working at a company called Jumio, so which does eKYC for like let's say if you want to sign up on Airbnb and you want to like verify whether this person is like an actual person or not. So something like an Airbnb can integrate Jumio and then tell with this APIs whether the IDs are verified or not. They used to do this a lot with humans, and then when I came in, the team was moving towards like trying to automate a lot of this. So I was working in the team to automate the bad quality of IDs. So, for example, if an ID card is having glare or it's like just let's say torn from a certain part, so we were using like vision models at that time. So segmentation models, basically to detect whether which part of things were like let's say glossy or like not visible and all of that. So we reject those things with machine learning directly instead of having to send that to human. So like these problems might actually sound very trivial, but the main key like product POV here is that you want that like let's say when the model says that this is a bad quality ID, it needs to be very very sure about that fact. So let's say if there is an ID which is bad quality, and if it says that it's not bad, it's okay. But if an ID which is not bad quality and it says it's bad, then that's very bad user POV. Because like let's say if you're a person uploading your ID card and it's okay, and the model says and it's automatically rejects it as being like bad, then like the user would just drop off. So we had to build like models which had very, very, very low false positive rates. Even if they do not like have a very good coverage, like let's say they are detecting 30% of the bad quality ITs, but we had to keep like the false positive rates very low. So yeah, so work there around those things, and then beyond that, also like some model quantization, like bringing the size of models down, having them available on your mobile itself directly there. And then yeah, then like around it was May like 2021, it was like between the COVID periods itself. And like I think even during the COVID period, like we and my co-founders, we were like a lot on like YC content. And like one of my co-founders who's like was very, very into like what Paul Graham essays were, how like doing things, building things, all of that. And like he was just bombarding me and like a couple of my friends with like just all this content, like kind of brainwashing us that like yeah, we should start build something of our own and all of that. So yeah, so actually like then in itself we started like just tinkering around with things. We were like, so the first thing that we thought of building, and like at that time we were very interested into like financial. It was like our first jobs after college. We were earning some money, so we were investing some money into stocks and everything as well. A lot of it was very popular that you would like, let's say, having like people were giving tips around like trading, right? That you can buy at this point, sell at this point, a lot of those things. So, and this behavior was going around on WhatsApp, Telegram. So we thought like, what about we just build a platform that helps in like doing this. At that time, like we built, like I built out a platform around that, built like web apps for the first time. So throughout my college journey, like technically like so it's not a great thing, but in our college like web development was a little bit looked down upon. And like all the time it was like doing like, let's say, security is cool, systems is cool to an extent as well, machine learning was the coolest thing. So like, but for the first time I was using React and like how things are built and like all of that. But yeah, so we built out a platform, reached out to a couple of YouTubers as well for partnerships and things like that, and like explored like how these things can actually work out. The idea didn't like pan out much, like after our initial tinkering. So we were like just doing this while our jobs. But like it gave us a good feel of things, like how it is like just building something of our own, trying some things, and like thinking about like, let's say, oh, how what if we like apply to IC with this thing, and like those things were pretty cool. So we took the decision that we'll just leave our jobs. So this was like in the mid of like 2021. And again, like India is like a much easier, like let's say for my savings, it was a much longer runway for me. I could be like easily, like comfortably work like on a startup without getting any money for a decent amount of time. So it was a natural thing, and my co-founders were there as well. So I left the job, came back into Bangalore, and then we just started iterating on a bunch of different ideas. And so like there were like wonky ideas from building an audio chat app for like Bharat, which is like, let's say, India, like the tier two, tier three people, like cities who do not are like very fluent in typing or English, to like, let's say, fashion for tech bros. So this was a crazy idea where we felt like again ourselves as that we like tech bros do not have like good dates and everything, don't have good game. So now the problem is that like once is that you can exercise, but the other thing is that you can just look good by dressing well. And we thought like this is something that a lot of like guys should be interested in, right? So we also went around, like gave pamphlets with QR codes and all of that on the streets that like scan this out. And what we built out on the other side was like there were like a lot of micro influencers which had like 4,000 to 5,000 followers on Instagram, and they used to post like great dresses and like very good fashion sense and all of that. So we had a lot of supply side from that side, that these people thought, oh my god, I can actually earn money by doing something like this. But like when they had just 5,000 or 10,000 followers, to the other side of things. So we were trying to build this marketplace of sorts. But I think like what we realized is that people just did not, like guys just felt that there's nothing wrong with them. They wanted to get dates, but they didn't want to put any hard work for that, and like not like put in like any work into how they dress or how they look or like let's how they groom themselves. So like yeah, we like thought like yeah, that just does not make sense. We came on like around our ideas, like which were like from our time when we were working at different places, and initially like came around the idea of like engineering productivity, complete different thing from that. And like there were actually a lot of different steps when we reached to this point as well, but that's what we reached in the end. So engineering productivity, if I had to define, is basically like your Git and Jira metrics, right? So the problem that we are solving is that we were trying to solve is that when in an engineering team, a VP of engineering or a director or a CTO does not have visibility on like how good the projects are moving. So it's a problem that like I think like very old, been there across multiple organizations, and whenever we're talking to like these people, they always had this as a problem, and like every solution came out down to like doing this in Excel, right? So we thought like this is a good problem space. There were also some competitors which are getting funded in this area. We started building that and raised our initial round of funds. So this was from a VC called Better Capital India. Like we raised some funds in like 2022 summers from them, and then started building on this. But yeah, like over time, as we realized with this as well, again, is that it's not very scalable. Like every company has a different journey, every company has a different like need that they have, right? So different metrics that they look have different tooling. So it's like not a very productifiable thing. And like that becomes a problem. So like we were doing that, building that, and in the meantime, like when ChatGPT hit in like 2022 end, I remember we were like just experimenting with it a little bit, and like we had gone for a wedding of a friend, like way like away from our office, like all three of us, and it was just booming at that time, and like we were seeing like okay, like it's able to follow context very very well. So what I had not seen personally as well earlier is that you have a chat platform, and then when I'm like let's say referring, so for example this guy is a great footballer, then I am saying something, and then this guy is a great cricketer, and when I'm like using pronouns that okay, like who was the person I'm talking about, like before the last statement, right? It was able to actually do that conversation, and this was nothing that was there like earlier. So like it was a clear shift from how technology was before to now how technology would be. So then what happened is that we were seeing a lot of trends around people like they wanting that, comparing Google search results with ChatGPT's results, right? They were curious, like let's say if they send in same into Google, into ChatGPT, what will it respond? So what we did was, and we were building a lot of Chrome extensions for the engineering productivity idea as well, is that like let's say if you type in a term on Google, you get the ChatGPT response on Google's webpage. So how the generative experience is now, something like that, but a very early version of that, right? And then we thought like how cool it would be if you press a single button and it's available everywhere. So that was how like the V0 V1 of Merlin that was born out, and that like got us some initial traction, and since then we like raised another round of fund and have like grown into like what's now. And now it is like again more about like different platforms, different tools, everything in a single place. So yeah, that's like a TLDR of like the journey, I think. Like sorry for like I guess it went a bit too long, but yeah, like
No, that's awesome. I think it's awesome to see like how the journey evolved from over time, going from research to kind of where it is today. So one thing I'm kind of curious if maybe we could dig into a little bit is you mentioned that you had a lot of different iterations and you just kind of noodled around, I guess, to put it lightly, to say like you tried a lot of different things. You tried the fashion, you tried the AI engineering helper. Like what made you finally kind of settle on Merlin being the thing that you're going to focus on? Like, what were the, I guess, indicators that
yeah,
said, like, hey, this is the thing that I know that I want to focus on this as opposed to
right,
all the other things?
right. So I think like at every point the truest thing in the world is actually customers. Like customers will never like lie. They are like spending money or their time even for that matter on something. And when they're doing that, and if like are actually like let's say spending time, this means that it's a conscious decision for them. And it's not for like the fact that like let's say they want to please me or they want to like I'm nobody for them, right? So the ground truth of any startup, anything is customers, and either they are paying with their time or with money. I think in B2B cases, everything it's more with correlated with money. But otherwise, in a consumer setting, even if a consumer is giving their like 10 minutes of a day, that's a lot. Right. So I think like that is the ground truth principle that we operate on. And if like we build something that people actually are consciously going and like let's say using that. So I remember like when in earlier days we were doing the engineering productivity bit, we were pushing a lot, like with let's say a lot of different pilot companies that please try this out, right? What are your pain points? How you're feeling, right? They were like let's say we were talking to like some CTOs and like people in their team were just not using it a lot, right? Whereas when we shift to this, like again when we started doing Merlin, there were people who like wanted to use Merlin. They were like not able to sign in, then they were sending us an email, how do I sign in, right? If like let's say their request were failing, they were messaging us like how do I get around that, right? And that is a difference of day and night. And I think like that ground truth principle, when like the user love comes in and you there are people who actually want to use your product and like build for like work for that. I think like that is like a key difference between like let's say just thinking that this does not make sense into something like yeah, now I want to invest more time into that.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. You got to listen to your customers. And you mentioned you had a moment of virality. Can you tell us a little bit about the early versions of the product and
Right.
when you had that clarity that customers really, really like that
Right,
product?
right. Yeah, so I think like in the early days, so we were building it this like we built this out, we launched it on Product Hunt as well. We got good like let's say upvotes and everything from product, and there were like some tweet threads and all of that in the early days, everything that was done. But then one day we saw like our users like spiked a lot, and then we saw that what happened was that there was a YouTuber called like Brett, like I don't remember his second name, but Brett, and he had like around 3,000 subscribers on his YouTube channel, 300,000 subscribers on his YouTube channel, and he had covered us. And that video initially just got 100,000 views, then went to 300,000 views or sort. And we were like the first tool in the five set of tools that he was covering. And that was like the first insane, like let's say, peak of growth where like a lot of people were coming, and we were coming from a in like building systems in a way for B2B where like let's say one user at a time, right? Or like the number of active users is very, very low to now when you have like hundreds of users at the same time. And that was a very crazy jump in a very small amount of time. And on top of that, like at that time, like the APIs were not reliable at all. Like OpenAI, I think themselves didn't anticipate the flux of users that were coming in. Their APIs were failing all the time. The error rates were like massively high, like which we compare it to today. So I think like that was like one of like the early crazy experiences that we had like at the time. I even remember that what happened was one of the days was you don't have a lot of checks. So like we were using OpenAI APIs, and they had the moderation guidelines, right? That you should put your like a moderation API which they had also given on top of your like let's say responses, and we weren't aware of that at the moment. And this is like 1 month or something like after the API is launched. And then like at so Indian time, like 1, 2 a.m. or something, our OpenAI API got banned. And then we thought like what has happened, and like we like our users cannot use the product at all. Like and like you just like there's no way, what do we do? Right. And at that time we like just somehow either like got API keys from somewhere else and created a different account and then just tried to like route users to that. And at that time there were not a lot of tiered systems and all those things as well. You just plug in a card, put in like let's say 100 like $1,000, $2,000, whatever, and you just start getting that. And that's what we did. And then later realized that okay, because we didn't have the moderation APIs, some users were actually like using it in like not like a lot of good ways. And that's why like the API key got banned. But again, it was something like completely absurd that you like at like 2 a.m. in the night and you're like discovering that it has been banned and like you cannot do anything. You're trying to reach out to people, you're sending an email and all of that, and like just not like being helpless at that moment. Since then we also like put in time to build in systems. So for example, we have these multiple API keys. What happens if like let's say one fails, and gradually those systems are scaled into what we have now. But I think like yeah, at that time we had a lot of these growing pains where like let's say we were moving from a system which was not scalable at all to something like again, and it across like period. I think there have been multiple instances where we got to know, okay, yeah, this is something that should not be done, and we learn from that. Yeah.
That's a really cool story. So I'm curious to know about like what specifically kind of the first tool that you mentioned looked like. You mentioned that it didn't really have a lot of features.
Right, right,
It
right,
didn't do a lot, but it still had, kind of a critical mass of users.
right, right, right.
I'm curious like how long did you spend working on that first tool? And like what did you say like this is like the core set of features that we want to build that you actually ended up releasing to customers?
Right. So I think like yeah, as I was talking about like when we had released like the original Chrome extension, which was that you put in something on Google and on Google's webpage this thing would come in, right? We called it Google it. I think we did used to domain like own the domain as well for decent time because we thought like it might catch in like Google it like instead of Google it. But yeah, so we thought like the MVP would be that you just press command space or something. So we users of Raycast and everything as well, and like that is was pretty cool in like developer community. So that's where our POV was also coming from, that we build like let's say you press command space or something on your browser, and then basically a command like bar comes in, and there you could type in your prompt and you get a response. It was actually not even a chat, it was just like an input and an output box. And that was like the very original version of like Merlin. And how did we think of like that this is enough? It's like I think like at that time it was just cool, like yeah, this is good. It like what we were thinking of achieving is that it's cool if it's anywhere on your browser. So for example, we were internally using it for writing emails, like let's say instead of having to go on to ChatGPT's website and pasting the content there, getting that. And since then it came into like let's say taking the context of the user, right? So you like let's say select the email, whatever like you are responding to, and then press command bar, and then the thing is already there. And then you type in the text, and then with that context, it will give you the output. So I think like that was the original version. So like you select anything, that context will go into like the command bar, and then when you type in something with that context, you'll get the response. So I think like that is like kind of like the original feature, that you don't have to select and paste the context anywhere else. You just need to select it and then press a button, and then you type in your query and then get the response.
That makes sense. So what did this add on top of ChatGPT? Did this do a web search with the
No,
Google?
I think at that time it was not even web search. We obviously added web search pretty early as well. I think like just like few weeks down the line, we realized like web search is also an important feature, so we added that. But I think what it added was that like just taking your context from what you're doing, and instead of having to context switch between, like, let's say you are writing an email, right? You got an email from someone else, so if you want to reply to that with an like AI at that time, you would have to select that email, go into ChatGPT, put that email, write a prompt that okay, like give me the response of this email like in a whatever way, and then it will give you the response. Instead of that, what it saves you is that, like, let's say you select the part of the email, you press command space, the context is already there. You type in the, like, let's say I just want to reply like this, and then you get the reply, then you click it there and then it's pasted. So what it was saving is, at the end of the day, was convenience, like saving a bunch of clicks that a user want to like need to do, and taking it from the context of the user.
That that sounds like a good journey in iteratively adding features over time
Yeah.
based on like what works, trying something really simple.
Yeah.
So you talked a little bit about your journey of how you started and what the initial product looked like. We kind of wanted to dig into some of the features that Merlin has now. But as like the CTO, as the technical founder, maybe you can give us an overview, high level overview of what the product is today, what it offers users, and how you think about building that as like as someone technical who's overseeing the development of like a major application.
Right. So I think like right now, if you look at the app in terms of looks, it's very similar to, like, let's say ChatGPT or Perplexity. What we are offering, as I mentioned to the users, is like getting these different UXs or AI tools that are there in different platforms. So for example, like the projects bit, which is that you upload a lot of your own context. You can also get in resources from online with something akin to Notebook LM, and like I think in terms of getting resources, that's the best that I've seen in Notebook LM about apart from us. You can do a lot of things inside Merlin chat with that, right? If you want to generate images for product photography, a lot of different things with different good models, Flux, right, Recraft, or GPT or something as well. You can generate that inside Merlin. Then there are chatbots inside Merlin. So, like, again, the hypothesis and thesis being that instead of having to subscribe to all these tools, you get everything in one tool. And that has been like till this point in terms of a buyer persona argument. Whatever we also want to do now is that, like, we use Merlin just because like it's just better for doing that given thing as well. So for example, instead of using Chat GPT for actually like the GPT-3 or GPT-4 or whatever, right? You actually want to use Merlin, take the same models inside Merlin because it might just feel better. So that is something that we also want to achieve with our product, that it's not just you use it because of the aggregation part, but even from the UX POV, right? That it's just smoother to work it with, like, let's say more, like, let's say you get in more context and all of that. So that is something that we are working on right now. We are like overhauling like our decision system. We have overhauled our, like, let's say the UX part of it as well, and like just want to be in a state that it's like out of the box is better than all the other tools that we mentioned. Yeah. Now I think like coming from a technical part of it, I think like a lot of it is going in the direction of like now agentic systems. It has already been, but as we go more and more, I think like it's a lot more around like automation of things, and I like really believe that chat is a great interface for doing a lot of those things. So for example, like if we look at it as chat, we have been doing chat since, like, let's say text messages and SMSs, or like before or something like that. So it's been like easily 25, 30 years, or even before you had like internet messaging, like something like 40 years when you had the original version of internet, right? Emails and everything. So chat has been an interface which has been there with us for like good few years, right? And that's why when you're talking to another person, I think like that will be similar to how you're talking to an agent or something itself as well. So I think like that chat in itself unlocks a lot of that you can just chat to the person, like the AI, and then like just ask it to do the things that you want, and it does it for you. And that is what we are now trying to bring more into Merlin as well. As is that, like, let's say you just chat with Merlin and, like, let's say the agent or whatever it is in out there, which we are working on right now, and then you get those things done. You like don't have to build a complex workflow, or, like, let's say the different things like connecting and all of that, right? Because those things are not natural to humans, I would say, that much. And what we want to do is that you can, like, let's say how you would, so for example, like, let's say if you want a marketer in a team, like a junior marketer, to actually create a content for a LinkedIn article, research it, or for example, like, let's say you're talking to each other about like a podcast, right? You're talking about the people you can potentially interview, right? You want to do some research about people who are out there, some trends and all of that. Now when you're talking to each other, you're doing it like on a text message maybe, and as you're remotely, you'd want that inside Merlin with some agents, you can do that automatically, right? You just type into it, and then it is able to do all of that research and things for you, and then give you the information. It need not be that it respond to you immediately. It can respond in some time, but do it like that. I think like similar thing has already happened in coding to a very large extent, with, like, let's say all these different IDs which have like agentic tools inside it, right? Code, Windsurf, code, like, let's say Cursor, all of them have like great agents which are long running for a decent amount of time, and then give you the output, which is there in deep research as well. But that has not been done for like the marketing segment that we are working on, right? A lot. And we want to, like, let's say take it to that level, that right now it has been like a lot of chat and, like, let's say different tools. And again, marketer being the major persona who is using this aggregation of tools, now we want to move on to like getting things done for them as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. So one thing I wanted to ask you about, we were kind of talking about this before, is about the router, or like what you call it, the Merlin magic, to try to figure out what the best model is for the question, is my understanding. So is the idea, would that be kind of like, if I have a question, you mentioned about marketing, a podcast, whatever, if I ask the question, your technology would figure out what is the best, most cost efficient model
Yeah.
to respond to that question? Could you maybe dig in a little bit uh, to kind of describe how that works?
Right, right, right. So I think on a high level, like what we are trying to do is that, so I think cost is also one parameter, but I wouldn't say it like the main parameter that we are focusing on. So we first, like, I think to an extent rule out, like, yeah, the very, very expensive models, because I think if you start using O3 for everything, like, it will just be probably better for everything. It will take a lot more time, but it will probably be better for like almost all things. Obviously, there are like things where like now clouds on it. So again, like these things are actually very evolving. So we need to like keep up. But broadly, what we do is that, like, when you are like asking a question, we have a router which, like, let's say decides which model should be used, and then like that model is like selected and then gives you the response. And for this, what we do is like a combination of, like, let's say once is like the benchmarks which are out there already, right? There are like a lot of different. We keep on researching like which use cases people are hitting like the best, like liking it or not. And then we also have a like or dislike system inside our product. So for example, when people have Merlin Magic on, with which model, how much are they liking it, right? What is the like ratio, dislike ratio? And our job over time is that we need to keep on optimizing these things, that over time, like, let's say when you, like, a given model is selected, its likes should be higher versus the dislikes. So the like to dislike ratio of a given model when it's selected should be as high as possible. That is in a way like the metric that we judge whether it's doing good or not. And this is like an evolving process, that, like, as new and new models keep coming in, you need to experiment a little bit. You first need to see it a little bit with your hunch, like what makes a lot of more sense. You have to, like, let's say, see with like what other people are seeing, and then you need to plug it in, and then you need to like see what your users are actually like feeling with that, and then keep on iterating beyond on that.
Can you tell us what the most popular model right now is?
Yeah, so I think like so this actually depends a lot on how we place things, because we have like a model picker, right, as well. So like I think like across things, like where if we place a model right on the top, then it becomes more popular. If it's like slightly down, but I would definitely say like Claude is very popular, because so what happened was that, like, I think when Claude 3.7 came in, it was like, so it was generating a lot of tokens. So when it was released, like the outputs that it was giving were generally bigger than what Claude 3.5 were. So like our cost started increasing a decent bunch. So we thought was like, what, let's do this thing, let's place it a little down, for now. I know like it's like I think with respect to product, it's not the great thing, but yeah, looking at like everything, we thought like let's try placing it down a little bit. But even after placing it down, like the usage of it was like not going down a lot. So my point being like a lot of people like Claude is actually like much more like popular than like and like much more effective than it's like I would say like the brand value of it. Like yeah, but Claude I think is very popular among users. I would still say like so Gemini, what we've seen is like pretty good, but I would say in popularity terms, I think like Claude and like GPTs are like much above like Gemini still. I think like people when they come themselves, I think like still like even though we also actually give Gemini as a default for a lot of things, because I think on a Pareto principle, cost versus performance, it's pretty good. But otherwise, like I think people still gravitate towards Claude and like GPT is much more.
Have you noticed any difference in the use cases? Like if one model is better for, coding, I think that's
Right.
been Claude's proficiency.
Right. I think no, for sure. I think like Claude's proficiency has been around coding, and but I think like even also on writing, right? A lot of like let's say our users are copywriters, and like let's say and feel that when you are using Claude, like it's more like let's say natural and humane in those responses. We have also plugged in Grok pretty recently, I think, and we are still seeing like how people are using that, but like not a lot of data on that. Like I would say Grok particularly, but I think like people use Claude a lot for coding, and then obviously a lot for like let's say just writing things out at the end when you're getting the final response. Other than that, I think like reasoning part, like people are using GPTs a lot more, like O3, O1, and we had to plug in like O3 with tools like web access and everything. And I think like personally like O3 with tools as like unmatched in terms when you're doing like brainstorming, right? And you're actually talking about doing research. I think like O3 plus web access is a very crazy combination.
Yeah, that's kind of brings me to another thing that I was thinking about. So two questions. One is like, how do people use Merlin today? And maybe once we talk about a couple use cases, see if there's any agentic workflows that you have in the pipeline, because
Right.
most tools are moving into an agentic
Right.
flow. So can you tell us what are the most popular use cases for Merlin?
Right. So I think like among like we like did a deep dive, and as we are like pretty horizontal, like there's like different user personas that are out there. So there's like the marketers, there's the students, there are the engineers. I think like the three biggest ones. If like we're looking at engineers, I think like that they have like all the tools that are there that are out there, they are doing the same thing. Right? We were looking at like the actions to the number of users. So like debugging is like crazy. So people are like, let's say when they have to debug something, they're putting in messages after messages, and like I think like it is there, like the user behavior is there that you want to use AI a lot when you want to debug and all of that. But like I think yeah, as I mentioned, like there are a lot of different tools where we're not double downing on that aspect more. Then there are like the students are marketers, and students they're like homework related aspects, right? For example, like let's say if you have a different class, right, you want to get in, like you create like a project of all the material from that class, and then you can like chat with that, help it solve your homework and all of those things which are there. For example, understanding history and these subjects. And then when coming to marketers, I think like it's around like let's say rephrasing things, right? Creating projects. So for example, if you're a marketing consultancy, you like have a client, then you put all the information of a client inside a project, and then create new content out of it, create emails for that client, or like let's say create project proposals, all of that. And then you can also create ad copies, do research for those things. So I think like this is something that we are seeing like more, a lot of agentic use cases are now possible. That what you can do is that instead of a person just using Merlin for like doing a lot of these research and the initial legwork, what it can do is that it can have like the whole workflow for you. So like starting from like doing this research to like let's say identifying what should be a workflow. So for example, if you have to create a content campaign, right, or an ad campaign, what should be like let's say the persona that you're hitting, what should be your schedule of doing things, generating content for each of those things, right, and then even posting that content on like let's say your LinkedIn or your Twitter, and then getting the analytics of those things back into the product, and then those using those analytics to then change how its content should be. So these like a lot of these agentic use cases I was mentioning earlier, like in marketing there's like a lot of different tools that are out there that people can use. So you there's like the old OGs, like which are the like Jaspers and like Copy, which have not kept up a lot, I would say. To now there are like a lot of tools into like ad making, for example, icon.me, or there is like captions.ai and all of those tools. So there are like a lot of tools which can be used for like these marketing aspects, but there's no agentic framework where you like just give it the task and that the whole thing is done end to end and it keeps on happening, right? So it's like an engine. So that is something that we are like basically looking into it, right? Like how we can grow in like basically do a lot of those things in an agentic fashion.
What
That
tools
kind of
does Merlin? Oh, go ahead.
that kind of reminds me of one of the other companies we had present, Retriever AI.
Yeah,
It would be interesting if you kind of emulate some of their model to take on agentic workflows,
right,
browser use, DOM manipulation, or like DOM at least
right.
access to see what the content is and take actions on the user behalf.
Right. Yeah, no, I like they are like doing some great stuff and talk to them as well. And I think like, but for a lot of these use cases, you don't necessarily even need DOM a lot of times actually. So it's again like a debate among us as well, like whether for a lot of if like let's say some things need DOM, then you use that. But using DOM is actually quite complicated and like let's say more error prone, I would say. So like we would like ideally stick to like let's say when it's possible to use APIs and when it's more like needed then use the DOM, right, and which is there in the browser with our extension. So I think like that is like our approach in a way that like we don't want to do all in into like just one thing with like let's say the extension. uh like a lot of these things posting on Twitter with an API, right, it's possible that you can actually post content through an API, right? You don't need to control the users thing. And like let's say if you are a like more a person whose actually workflow is to like post these things on Twitter, you will be fine to like let's say give an authentication as a app or something. And that's what we have also like recently introduced MCPs into Merlin as well. Like basically tools, I would say, tools via MCPs. So people are now integrating a lot of their tools and like let's say trying to take actions with that.
What are some of the popular tools that you see that people are using the MCP server to access? And also, I'm curious, are they all web-based tools, or is it possible to use Merlin maybe locally from your computer? Like, I don't know, I didn't even
Yeah.
see one, but does Merlin have an API that I could maybe use to plug into on my local computer to maybe give access to my file system or something like
Right.
that?
Yeah.
Or is it
No, no,
all just web-based?
yeah. So I think like that's not there at the moment. So what we have thought of MCP is again like more our users are slightly less on like the professional side, like not professional, I would say like more technical. Like we are like more targeting towards like the masses who like let's say do not necessarily know how should they install an npm package or something on your computer or do not know how they can like let's say get the token or anything, right? So when we are integrating mcps and tools, we are actually doing it with authentication. So for example, you click on it and then you get the OAuth to flow and then you give permissions and then that's integrated. So you don't want the user to actually like let's say go into the platform, get the tokens or whatever, right? So that is not our target audience to an extent. So that's why like we have not integrated the file system thing yet, which is something that we are exploring that we can even do inside a web app. So actually through an extension, you can actually like or like not the extension, even if with the service worker, you can possibly have access to the file systems as well. So that is something that we'll probably explore with an MCP in like some time down the line. But right now, I think like in terms of the tools that we have integrated, I think like a lot of people are using G Suite tools. Like as I mentioned again, like a lot of them are marketers and all of them, so they are like again G Suite is a go-to for a lot of them. Then I think becomes like tools like Twitter where you can post stuff directly through inside him like Merlin itself. So for example, you can just say that okay, like this is like a tweet about blah blah blah, and then like it will create the tweet. You can use a lot of research, go back and forth, and then just say like post it through my account, and it'll post it. And like calendar as an MCP, and like now we are like expanding upon like what all tools that we can add. I think as we were adding tools, we hit a bottleneck at a certain point where we felt like our decision pipeline was just not making a lot of sense how it was set up earlier. We had to like overhaul that, and that is now once that goes into production, then we'll come back to it like just adding more tools and like making them more reliable. But yeah, like I think like in like these tools, I think it's very important that these tools are actually maintained well and are always working. Because like let's say otherwise it's very easy that they like let's say go in the wrong direction, or if they are not maintained, like these things will just not work properly. Yeah. Good.
So I see that you are building a lot of different tools. How do you decide what tools to build? Are
Right.
customers telling you to say like, "Hey, we really want this integration with Google Docs," or is it just an intuition that you have?
Yeah.
Kind of, what's your process for figuring out what to build next?
Right. So I think like this is in a consumer setting, it's like very like different and harder, I would say, from a B2B setting. Like in a B2B setting, you would have like, let's say, a company that you're working with. You can talk to them. They will tell them your problems. If you like, let's say, after a certain level of comfort or time that they have, then you can maybe validate that problem with few other people that you're working with, and then you can build the features. In a consumer setting, you almost have no contact with the users. You like it's kind of a black box that they're out there. So in fact, like we have some teams like which have like 70 users, 200 users which have onboarded onto Merlin, and like they don't even want to come on a call. They like just swipe their card online and like and just are happy with that and like do not want to be disturbed unless they have an issue. They send them an email and then like yeah, we try to resolve for them. So I think like in consumer, it's like very hard to actually be like very in touch with them, like what people want. So in this case, I think like there are like like to an extent three parts to it, right? So one is that you need to listen to your user feedback that comes in. They generally they will be from the aspect that today something X is there, it will be like X plus one or like X dash. Or then another is that in AI, so many things are happening that like let's say other people bringing things on and like they ship that right, and then some users are now that okay like this is out there in this product like do you plan to do this or integrate something or like this. So there are some of those things as well. And the other third part is like your intuition, right? What do you want to build or what do you see that is possible with this? So I think like we have like different things. So one is from the product side and one is to an extent like the engineering side. So we are very engineering like ownership like team that we want engineers to take ownership of what they're building and like actually like ideate on things that we can build as well. Because I think like with like AI, a lot of the things that just become possible now which were not earlier, I think that needs to come a little bit from engineering. So we take and do a lot of that. Like let's say if an engineer is like who's building, so we like again call like the engineers product engineers. I think like all the engineers in our team actually have to have like a sense of what is the product that they're building, what they're building, how the users will use that, right? And they need to feel the pain of the user. Like let's say if something is not working or something is not going good, they need to feel that pain. So we have like let's say these part of things that are our own intuitions. So that is can be from us founders or like let's say the engineers or anyone in the team that this is something that can be useful. So that is one part of the product roadmap, and the other part of it that comes from the users. Like let's say we have Canny, which is like has a lot of tickets. So there are people suggest features, people suggest bugs, right? All of them. So we take in feedback from there. We also do a lot of user calls as well from these users. So for example, if someone is using a platform for certain thing, we try to like let's say as much as possible schedule a call with them, ask what they are trying to do, and then bring in some like product points from there. So I think it is a big mix of both. So it's one part is the intuition of us, like let's say the team with what is possible now with AI, and the other part is like what is the user pain points and like how to solve for them.
So, given all of these AI tools, I'm sure the amount of AI generated content is just exploding.
Right.
So, one of the cool tools that you have is the AI detector.
Yeah.
What made you build that, and how well does it work?
Got it, got it. So okay, so I think like this AI detector is more from the POV of SEO that we did. So like I think like some time back, like this was an insight that we had was that like AI tools are actually very good for SEO. So in fact, like yesterday I was looking at Clay.com's SEO thing as well. So you must know of Clay.com, right? Uh, Clay.com. Okay.
Travel.
No. The GTM automation tool, Clay.com. I think they've raised like 100 million or something of that sort.
Okay.
Yeah. Got it.
Yeah, I've
Okay.
not heard of Play.com.
Yeah. So I think like they're pretty big. I think like so, but yeah. So just was like talking about this point that in SEO there are like a lot of tricks that you can do, which is to like just get traffic to your website, and they might be related to your product. They might not be related to product. So for example, Clay.com is a tool which helps users to enrich data, right? So for example, their consumers might be like let's say having a LinkedIn lead, then getting information about like let's say what that LinkedIn person is, are they relevant for you or not. So they have a lot of web pages around like let's say where's the headquarters of Apple. So I think if you Google Apple headquarters, the first article will be Clay.com, which is pretty interesting and weird in a way that it's not related to the product. So similar way in that as well, we like built out a lot of AI web tools. So we had an insight 1 year back that like AI tools are actually very good for SEO because like they like let's say if a user comes to a web tool. So for example, a web tool could be like let's say converting docs to PDF. That is also a web tool. When you're doing that, you come to that page, you spend a decent amount of time, And for Google, like as you know, like it will be very good that, like, let's say if someone is spending good amount of time on a page, this means it's a good result, right? So that is how like web tools are pretty cool, and like AI web tools have been like scaling a lot. So that's why we built a bunch of different AI web tools. So for example, there's AI like detector, there is like AI rephraser, like then image generators, and like we have like these hundreds of these tools. And this strategy is pretty similar to how Canva scaled in its early years. That, like, let's say when you're looking for, like, let's say presentation template, right, or you're looking for an email template, or you're looking for a LinkedIn banner template, then what would happen is that Canva's pages would rank at the top for these things. And these were, like, let's say slightly like tangential things, and they would add then route to the Canva's main page with a template of, like, let's say this is a LinkedIn banner thing that you can do. So that's what the strategy was, that we, like, let's say have a lot of these mini AI tools, and when people are searching for this, then we, like, let's say come in and people can use us. So for example, the AI detector was like, I think at one point of time, like if you search in the US, it was like the fourth result that was coming in, and it is a very high volume, very competitive, like, let's say keyword. So yeah, so I think like that was kind of a rationale to build like AI detector, and that comes from SEO, like, and just like spending time there. And that's I mentioned, like SEO been a good driver for us like a long time, and like it's been like still one of like the like biggest chunk of like where we get the free traffic from.
Did you use any paid ads, or was this all 100%
Yeah.
search engine optimization?
Right, right. So for this AI detector, it was all 100% like SEO optimization. Like we didn't do any search ads or anything of that sort for this. And in that way, I think like Google is very meritocratic. Like, so if you like have our tool which is free, it does not have ads, and it ideally does not even need a login. Then, and if it's decently good enough, it will rank high. Even if, like, let's say a domain authority is not too high. So our domain authority is now 65, 60 something in that range, which is middle of the park. It's like not like very low, but it's not like, let's say, the 80s or something as well. And as you go up, like it becomes exponentially more competitive and harder. So for reference, like a company like HubSpot would have like 85, or OpenAI would have like 83 or something like that, right? So and as your like domain authority is higher, you generally whatever you build, you will like rank higher above. But in these, like, let's say AI tools or something, if you're actually giving value to the user, like it's more likely, let's say, that a page which has like an 80 domain authority but has a lot of ads, or has a login even for that matter, uh, then like a page which has lesser domain authority but is giving the users what they want, comes on the top. So I was even like, let's say, like talking to someone, and like on Google in itself as well, that in search, like let's say if someone clicks on like your page, and then the next search when they do, if that search's intent is similar to yours, like the last search intent, then they actually penalize that page. So this means that like their job was not technically done. So it's very meritocratic in that like POV, that when, like, let's say you are doing something, building something that gets a job done and is delivering on the promise of that keyword, then your thing will rank on the top.
So I'm curious, with search slowly dying, have you thought about like I don't know what to call it. Is there a word for like chat GPT
Yeah,
engine
search
optimization?
Yeah, generative. I think people are calling it generative engine optimization, something like GO basically.
Geo, okay.
Yeah. So I think like so like have a couple points in mind for this, right? So first of all is that we also, like, I think, check the health of our thing, like Merlin as well, like with respect to that, how it is going. With there, like some people who have just built out some tools which just call ChatGPT a bunch of different times and just see like where your tool is ranking in. So I think like first is like it's decently correlated with SEO as well. That, like, let's say if you have done SEO very well, your tool would start ranking on, like, let's say these ChatGPT's Perplexity and like even Merlin inside everything as well. Because at the end of the day, all of us are using some kind of web crawler which is similar technology, but the only, like, I think the difference being that you, like, let's say, try to remove as much of like the SEO clutter, which, like, let's say keyword optimization, all of that. Even if you try to reduce that, like, it will still seep in. So I would say, like, first of all, it's like very like good, well correlated with normal SEO. So I would say, like, if like people are doing like SEO initiatives, I think they should not stop that, because if your page is coming high on, like, let's say normal Google search, it will come pretty high on, like, let's say the AI search result output as well. So first of all is that. And the second is that you need to make your web page very like readable for crawlers, right? More and more. Because like then there will be crawlers from different websites. For example, Claude has a new crawler now. Now, if that crawler can actually read your web page well, then you have a better chance of ranking. So I think like these two factors are very important, that your web page is easily crawlable, easily machine readable as well. So for example, the elements inside your page should be like making sense to an LLM as well as to an human, right? So for example, there might be some JavaScript or something that you write it in a certain way, some UI elements that might come to a human and then make the UI better. But if that thing is not present to an LLM and then the LLM is just not able to make sense of it, so then that will be bad. So you should make like your pages more machine readable as well. That like let's say, and when an LLM scrapes it, it's able to make like understand what's the content on there.
So I see that on Merlin you have both free and paid tier users. How do
Yeah,
you not lose too much money on
yeah,
your free users?
yeah,
And how do you ensure that your pro users don't
yeah.
just use all of your API credits?
Right,
So
right, right.
is there kind of like, how do you think about
Yeah,
that balance between,
right,
providing enough value to the free users while
right.
also incentivizing those upgrades?
Yep, yep, yep. So I think like for sure. So I think like the free user problem was, I think, a bigger problem like I think 1 year back. Because at that time like the APIs were 10x expensive than they are today, and like even more like let's say 2 years back. So I think at the moment like free user thing is not that big of a problem, because with the credits that we have put in like in terms of charges for query, and like now how LLMs have actually become much more cheaper than they were earlier. I think like free users are pretty like let's just contain in terms of like how much they're using, right? So I think that is not a big problem. But what a problem that in the AI world becomes is that for pro users, they want to use a lot more of AI, and like you have now use cases, for example, deep research, right? You have more agentic use cases. Even now, when we roll out the new decision flow, it will not just be that you just get an output from a single tool. It will actually be like 4 or 5 tools will be used one after the other, and then you get the output. So this means that your context is not 10, 20K context window. It's like 100K, 150K. And then like, if you're like, can want to do it, it can go up till a million context window as well. So these power use cases are places where actually like like the cost of doing things is now increasing a lot more. So for example, like now, for example, with Claude 4, you can do a lot more of those tool use cases. These things were just not possible 1 year back. And as these were not possible 1 year back, you would not need to think about like, okay, should I give in more context window? In fact, most of the models didn't even have, I think like Claude for the longest time didn't have even 100K context window, right? So the problem was that this was not a problem. So paid users were not a problem 1 year back and are a problem today. Free users were a problem 1 year back. They are not a problem today. So I think like now our optimization comes in like how do we think about these power user use cases and build a like let's say a plan around that. And what we have like now implemented in Merlin is that you have like these tiers of like let's say $20, $5, whatever, and you get some amount of usage for this, right? You won't say credits or those things for like let's say out of the box when you're using Merlin. But like let's say when you're closer to your limits, like let's say if you have crossed like 60-70% of a limit, then we show that okay, there's this limit, and like if you want to increase beyond that, you'll have to do a top up or something. So for example, how would you do a data top up, right? It's similar in that way. uh, Otherwise we don't actually even show it, because so there's also this point like if you show this usage upfront to the user, then it enables a scarcity mindset in the user, and they just don't want to use the tool, and it becomes very like it becomes a tax on the usage in itself as well, that they'll just try to avoid using the product as much as possible when this is happening. So that's why we went with a tiered usage, that you have like let's say some flat usage when you do like $20 or something, and then when you're closer to reaching your limits, we give you a top up that you can like just use it as a one time thing. You want, you can do it a recurring thing or sort as well, and like, yeah.
That's a really interesting strategy to not actually focus on any specific issue, but adapt to the challenges as your company and app and usage and customers grow.
Yep.
Because you're right, I think the usage for the price of these models has significantly gone down, and that makes sense that like the free users would be not as much of a problem. But then like the agentic use cases have just like shot up. So like the expensive models, the clouds, the not to mention like image generation. I think
Yeah.
with the GPT-4o's image generation, especially now that they have their API, I think the amount of usage with that has gone up. And I'm sure if and then I don't think you guys support video as of today.
Not at the moment, but yeah, that is something that we're actively looking at as well, because VO3 is just like I think like it like everything is like beyond, like it's like way beyond anything. And I think like now it becomes like what kind of usage do you pack it in, because it's anyways very good out of the box. So I think you need to think about like what are the things that you can build on top of it, which like let's say just not like in the purview of like say Google doing it in itself.
But I'm also thinking about like the price point. You might need to
Yep.
introduce a new pricing tier because Google's VO3 is only available in their ultra
Yeah, yeah,
pricing tier, which is like $250 a month. So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think that'll be a lot more expensive than your whatever $19 in a
Yeah,
month.
yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, so that's why we have kept the top up thing, I think. So this means that you don't need to have a anchor of like, let's say this is a very high price. You just use it as you need, right? Like, let's see if you want to use like your credits are about to get finished, you can just get a top up and then use it for then. So I think like this is more user centric in the way that you don't have to take a big jump and makes a lot of more sense. And I think even from a builder POV, because we have our margins baked inside the top ups, then it's good for us. So I think it's a more of a win-win scenario with like these top ups that are there.
In oh sorry, Mark, go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna say I love the idea of the top ups and also the fact that there is the aggregator. Because one thing that's really annoying about trying all these LLMs, because for me, I love absolutely just trying all the latest and greatest LLMs as soon as they come out, and a lot of them are only accessible through the $20 a month plan. So for example,
Yeah.
Claude, they just came out with their Claude for models and then the extended thinking with the Opus models. And then, if you want to use it, you have to pay the minimum of $20 a month. And I actually happen to use a different aggregator, but I feel like I'm going to try to start maybe using Merlin AI uh, because you guys just support a lot more models than the aggregator that I use right now. So like I think that's really cool. And I love the idea of being able to just pop up and um, be able to try the models without actually having to pay for just yet another subscription, because
Yep, yep, yep.
there is like real subscription fatigue. So if you
Yep,
could
yep.
handle the subscription, that's much better for me. So I'm curious as um, for the kind of the future of Merlin and where you see yourself in the next couple of years. Like
Right.
where do you see kind of the trend is going?
Right, right, right. So I think like right now, one thing is for sure is like things are getting automated. Like software engineering, Anthropic CEO was himself saying that like 70% of their code is AI generated. And I don't see there's any reason why like this cannot go to 90, 100, and like software engineering in itself becoming automated in like 5 years down the line. And in fact, like when like just 3 months back, I think when GPT image generation model came in, I was talking to my co-founder and I was saying that 1 year down the line, there will be like models which will be able to generate audio, video, everything and with captions. And it'll be great, like let's say 1 year down the line, but it happened like literally in 2 months with VO3. So I think like whatever timelines that we have in mind with respect to things getting automated, I think it will be a lot faster than that. And when I see that in software, I see like there's no reason why the same will not be done in like marketing or like, and sales is also happening in like ASDRs and all of that. So this is something that you're focusing a lot more on. Like, let's say, how can we automate a lot of these things inside like Merlin through Merlin itself as well? And as most of our users are marketers, I think like now the next step naturally is to like automate a lot of these things for these users that we have. So that's where like the stage one was like again taking the context, all of that, and now it is about like acting behalf of the user. So that's what we are. I think like will be like the 2 years down the line vision of things that we can automate like all your marketing flows, that like let's say you do not need a like large team of marketers to running things. You can be a like let's say a solopreneur, and you can like just have an ad campaign which is running on behalf of you without having to actually have like multiple people working for you. So I think like that is where we are headed, and it's like a interesting future, and I think like we'll see like what happens then in that future. But it's definitely like you have to build according to that. So yeah.
So speaking of future plans, I know that you guys are supported on like multiple platforms. You have your web experience like ChatGPT, you have browser extension, which is really useful, mobile app, and I think the next frontier is like AR, VR, trying to come in your physical reality and bring in context as you're looking at things in the physical space. experiments or plans for that? Do you guys have any like experimental teams where you
Yeah,
just throw someone an experiment and say, hey, like let's
yeah.
explore this use case?
Yeah, no, no. So we have done. We actually bought like so we did an experiment on like household robots. So we bought even like a Go 3, like properly bought it, and like we were trying to see if like you can get like household things done with like let's say mounting an arm on top of it or something like that as well. I think very early on we like did realize that okay, like this is something that is slightly away from our wheelhouse and all of that. But we like I think all the time like we have a lot of experiments that are going on inside the team, and as we are like very engineering driven, like we have like freedom in the engineers that if we want to like we feel like something that fits in the team and they are very excited about and like building that, then we like give the freedom that yeah you can try that out. So like I think like in AI like doing experimentation is very important, because now the models are like at a very good capability stage, but like the tools that we have built out have not reached that capacity. And it is with just experimenting with things, then we will like get to reach that like point.
What about right now? What is the most popular platform? You have browser extension, mobile, web only.
Yeah, so I think like for the longest time our extension was the most popular thing. But like now like the main website is actually more popular because that's also like because how we have placed the CTA. That's like the main CTA on the website is like let's say if you type in on the command like on the like search bar, then it directly routes you to the website. So that's why like the website is the main I think like the thing right now. In fact, we also rank very well if you just search AI chat. So we because we don't have any authentication and anything, so we actually rank very highly on that. So that's why like our website is like the main flow right now. And then beyond that, like would be like an extension and then mobile app as well.
So I'm curious about, you have a lot of users, and I think that one topic that is kind of top of mind for a lot of users is their privacy. So a lot of users will put sensitive information into these chats, right? They're going to put in maybe their medical records, their emails, their
Yep.
bank details, whatever. What assurances can people have to say that you're not going to go and steal all their information and
Yep.
stuff like that?
Yep. No, I think like from our end, we are very clear on this aspect that so we are like SOC 2 GDPR compliant. We have like all the data privacy guardrails that are out there. The data is encrypted at rest. We like take care on like who is able like can actually access the data and like in the team and like on the engineering side of things. And with all the providers that we have an agreement that they will not train on our data. So I think from that, like we are very clear on the aspect that like data is not something that we want to like sell or like anything of that kind. Our main thing is that we want to like users to pay for a subscription or for the usage or the job that they are getting done, right? That is some like where we are like most the monetization platform like way for us is, and it's not ads, it's not like let's say anything of that sort like selling data and all of that, because I think like with AI so many things are now possible which were just not possible for earlier for humans to do on their own. That like the people used to pay for a lot of those things, and I think like with AI people can just pay a lesser amount of that on the platforms themselves. So I think like that's why like ads is not necessarily, at least for us, like not like something that we want to do. Or similarly like again having this data, like we want like we have strong guardrails around the fact that users like that data is for only them and needed like used for only the purposes which are like important to serve them. Yeah.
So I'm curious, to kind of change the topic a little bit. It seems like you've been very successful in making a business having, a lot of users and have built something that a lot of people use. Let's imagine somebody's listening to this and they want to start a business and they want to build something like you are building, some sort of consumer app, maybe with AI. What advice would you give to those people who are
Right.
just getting started, who want to,
Right.
figure out what that first step is?
Right. I think like yeah, here, like some principles that we also have internally is that so which is a very good YC advice is that in consumer I think like try to build something for yourself. If you're building something for yourself, then you are the user on day one itself, and you don't need to go out and like ask 10 people, okay, like hey, how do you feel about my app and all of that. You just use it on your own. You just see whether like let's say you are liking a flow or not, and you can just go and iterate very quickly on that. And I think if you're building for something for yourself, the speed of iteration is going to be 10x faster than anything out there. So one is that like this is a good rule of thumb, that like try to build something for yourself. uh Obviously there are like exceptions, and there are like cases when you can build for someone like another person, but I would say like it solves a lot of our problems if you build for yourself. The number two is like try to build something cool. In AI, like it's much easier to build cool things than like anything in the like which was earlier, and cool things get a lot of virality. Like there are like a lot of people who post about things like there are a lot of people on Twitter, LinkedIn who like actually are looking out for like things which are cool. And I think as humans as well, what we want to do is like we tell another person, hey man, did you check this app out? And that kind of like shows that okay, I know about this app, and because this app is cool, I'm also cool. So that is something that you want to bring in your users, that like let's say you just built out something cool, uh, and like something for yourself. I think like these are like two good starting points, and that will give you a lot of good initial traction in itself. And once you have that, then you can actually like start scaling a lot of other things that you need, right? You can start scaling on SEO as we did, performance, or like like influencer marketing and all the things that like the things that are out there in the toolbox. But I think on day zero, these things like don't cost you anything. So I think like these are like very good as like starting principles.
I think that's awesome advice. So I think we're about out of time. So wanted to wrap it up. Is there any question that we didn't ask you that maybe you wanted to mention? Anything at all that we forgot to ask? Any new things are coming out? Anything you're excited for? Anything at all?
No, no, no. I think like excited about like what we are like constantly building. So like follow us on like I think I can drop in my Twitter handle and like or like Merlin's Twitter handle and all of that. So follow us in there because we like post our updates constantly there. Check us out at getmerlin.com. Try it out, give us feedback, reach out to me if anything that you feel like. Because like we want to take in, like as I mentioned, like consumer feedback is not an easy thing. And if you are a user in a small SMB or like consumer who just wants to use AI and like instead of having these tools, have everything in one place, just like reach out and like happy to help out in any way and all of that.
Awesome. Sounds good. Well, we'll make sure to put all that in the description. And yeah, thanks so
Yeah,
much for taking the time. This was a really great conversation. I learned a lot. It was super fun. Yeah,
yeah.
thanks. Thanks so much. Seriously.
Yeah, again, I second that. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your journey, how you got here. It was really interesting to see all of the experiments, all the failed efforts, your obsession with, the YC ethos, polygraph essays. Love that.
Yeah, no, 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 for sure. Like I think like YC is like one of the best things out there for early stage startups as like just free content. And like even when you're I think like confused about like business decisions, a lot of times it's like very easy to like just reflect upon them and then not make a mistake due to that. And I think like the mid meme of like let's say you're stupid doing something, you're like very like in the middle. Sometimes you're doing execution and you become the midwit and are trying to optimize 10 things, but then it becomes that like even the genius person is just doing what the stupid person is. So I think like that actually helps the clutter a lot. And again, YC principles like kind of just simplify a lot of complex things for you. So
Awesome. Thank you so much.
yeah,
And
thanks for having me. Thanks for having me. And like yeah, you folks are running a great podcast, and like I think like the meetups are very good as well. So like yeah, it was great chatting to you, Mark and Shashank.
likewise.
Like
And to all of our listeners, we will see you next time.
thanks. Bye.